Hey everybody, AJ back for the Mighty Glue Stick channel, your source of a ridiculous overabundance of dragons, today being no exception. After some rather insistent requests from some valued members of our community, we finally get a closer look at the two most powerful dragon species, the Force and the Prismatic Dragons, otherwise known as the Epic Dragons. The reason why they're called the Epic Dragons is they're found in the pages of the Epic Level Handbook, written by Bruce Cordell and Andy Collins for Wizards of the Coast and published in 2001 for the third edition of Dungeons & Dragons. The Epic Dragons are true dragons, but they are outside the categories of metallic and chromatic dragonkind. They do not share the same origin, do not consider themselves as part of the politics of dragonkind, and are not beholden to anything less than a greater deity. Epic dragons don't consider themselves just to be superior to almost other mortal creatures. They know damn well they are. First off, they are by far the largest dragons. Even when they first hatch, they are huge creatures. They also start life with most of the power that lesser dragons only attain as full adults. They live for a very long time, taking 2 centuries to reach adult size, and a great worm is typically over 2,400 years old, by which stage they hit a size category called Colossus Plus. Normally a monster is considered colossal when it exceeds 64 feet in height or length and weighs more than 125 tons. Such creatures usually take a 30-foot square of space and have a 20-foot reach. Well, Epic dragons have a 40-foot by 80-foot square of space and a 20-foot reach. The great worm Epic dragon can carry around 27 tons without being considered overly over-encumbered. They can lift something weighing 54 tons, or put it another way, they can slam into something with 125 tons of body weight and 54 tons of raw muscle power. They are absolutely siege beasts, so double any damage they inflict on physical structures. These creatures can systematically demolish a castle if they set their minds to it, with relative ease. Epic dragons don't have any restrictive alignment or personality archetypes. You could say that they're neutral more often than not. However, it is true that Force dragons are generally more aggressive and bigoted and arrogant than the relatively gregarious and friendly Prismatic dragons. Force dragons are also aloof. They do not care to concern themselves with far inferior creatures. They, like the Prismatics, have no particular preference for terrain in their lair. They do love to collect treasure. They hoard treasure, of course, being true dragons. They collect incredible hoards, typically twice as much as a regular dragon. They also tend to carry and use very potent magical items, such as rings of regeneration, crystal balls, powerful amulet, iron stones, and whatever book of magic they happen to be reading at the time. Even as hatchlings, Epic dragons can cast spells. They have a fully functional aura of dragon fear. Their frightful presence is supernatural, so even though they're simply stunning to look at, they are also deeply unnerving. Both dragon breeds have very large wings and can cover long distances in flight. An adult will usually fly about 400 miles per day, less if they're out hunting, as they frequently stop to grab, rip apart and eat any particular creature that looks delicious. The Prismatic dragons tend to fly well away from farms and villages to hunt, so as not to eat the local livestock. The Force dragons simply stay away from civilization altogether and prefer to roam freely over a huge territory, hunting for the very best prey. Neither dragon eats anywhere near what a non-magical creature of such massive size should eat. The Force dragon is believed to siphon off magical power from items in ruins, sacred sites, and magical emanations. The Prismatic dragon simply flies well above the cloud layer and absorbs sunlight directly. Their internal chemistry is pure draconic. Every part of them is coursing with magical and elemental power. Every single part of these creatures is considered charged up like a magic wand. Their blood is as magical as a potion. Their claws and fangs are as magical as blades. Their eyes are crystal balls. Their scales are magical shields. Their internal organs are direct links to the elemental planes. Their minds are libraries of magic and history. These creatures look lesser gods in the eye and say, "Get off my lawn, kid." Mighty adventurers are like pets, like particularly impressive insects. If you bother them, they will swat you or spray you and inspect your gruesome death with a nod of satisfaction, just as we would a housefly or a cockroach that dared to show itself in our very presence. Prismatic dragons, however, happen to love insects. I mean, mortals. They happen to love watching mortals. They find them fascinating, and the cities and towns of humanoids, the wonderful, ever-changing nature of them, the endless array of different personalities and beliefs that we have. They actually really enjoy meeting with, getting to know, and observing the frantic and brief lives that these humanoids lead. A prismatic dragon has a very gregarious attitude, particularly for such a mighty creature. They don't mind the company of the more light-hearted metallic dragons, and may even tolerate a blue or a green dragon lurking close to their territory, as long as they don't disturb its chosen group of humanoids too much. While some choose remote lairs where humanoids tend not to venture often, many don't mind the hustle and bustle of the tiny humanoids on their doorstep. There is simply no disguising the presence of them from humanoids, so they don't even bother. They will lair almost adjacent to them, claiming a castle on a mountain overlooking a hamlet, or a cavern network just off the shore of a bustling trade port. The local people will simply point out the place the prismatic dragon dwells, and the rainbow is permanently stationed over its lair, with a shrug saying, "Yep, the town is protected. We don't know if it will save us from a war or not, but nobody dares risk it." If you're at all familiar with Fraggle Rock, the humanoids would be the dozers, except there would only be one Fraggle, and it would have the personality like Zaphod Beeblebrox from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. "Little fruits are building up little castles out of little rocks far out, man. Look at them go. I bet if I had to sleep and wake up, they would have built the whole thing. Oh yeah. Maybe they'll build it up around me, make it out of pearl and silver. All right, too pretty. Hurt yourself. Take your eyes out. Put them in a box. Too much to look at, baby. Come on. Magrathea." Well, maybe not exactly like Zaphod, but pretty charismatic. So what does a prismatic dragon actually look like? Really big. No joke, they make red dragons look like pipsqueaks. A very old prismatic dragon or force dragon is larger than a Tarrasque. Okay, big. The sound of their breathing makes your chest rumble like you are at a rock concert. You can feel their heartbeat through the soles of your feet as you walk nearer them. When they look directly at you, you can feel the heat of it on your skin. One thing that many have noticed is that epic dragons have no smell. Normally dragons have quite a distinct smell to them, but not the epics. They have no odour at all. They are covered in very fine scales. This gives them a hide that seems as smooth and glossy as a snake. Young prismatic dragons are covered in brightly reflective scales and have an aura of shimmering multicoloured light. This light is actually a field of deflective force that adds to their nigh invulnerable hide. This means that aside from the negative modifier due to their huge size, the armor class of an adult or colossal size is 30. 30. They also have exactly the same defensive and offensive traits as a Tarrasque, as well as being completely immune to sleep, charm, any form of paralysis, any form of light or radiant damage, including prismatic beams of any kind, sunbursts and such. They're immune to blindness. They have true sight. They've got well over 1,000 hit points and have spell-like abilities to create hypnotic patterns, plus they can release prismatic sprays, prismatic walls, prismatic orbs, and the sunbeam spell. The breath weapon is essentially a massive prismatic spray in a 70-foot cone. So take a moment and go read up on what that spell actually does. Now imagine a 70-foot cone of that coming at you. Luckily, prismatic dragons would rather talk with a humanoid than attack it. They only respond violently to violence being attempted against them, but, well, it's usually over pretty damn quickly. Each round, the prismatic dragon will have a bite attack, 2 claw attacks, 2 wing slap attacks, 1 tail slam attack. One of these can be swapped out for casting a spell or using a magic item for that action. You can also opt to crush an adjacent area alongside itself, along with anything standing there which fails to get out of the way fast enough. And that crush from something that weighs over 125 tons is impressive. Force dragons hatch from eggs that are so large you could fit 2 into a standard shipping container. They are covered in glittering scales like tiny diamonds, and as they age, the dragon becomes more and more translucent. It is observed by a shimmering haze that causes, at first, a blur-like spell effect, and this progresses onto a full displacement effect, exactly like a displacer beast. And then it becomes fully invisible when it reaches venerable age, and even those who can see the invisible still have to contend with this displacement effect, which still persists even when it's invisible. So although colossal in size, the Force Dragon is still very hard to actually hit in combat. They can also unleash an array of force powers in combat, so just pick and choose a bunch of force, telekinetic, and barrier-themed spells and have at it. Their breath weapon is again a massive cone of pure force that simply rips apart and crushes everything in its path. Force dragons are completely immune to any form of force magic, effect, or attack. They just walk right through a wall of force like it was barely even there. Magic missiles, Mordenkainen's sword, zero effect. Now, my suggestion to you, as a dungeon master, one dungeon master to another, is that creatures like this are the sort of thing that 20th level well-equipped player characters can throw down against, only for a very good reason. They may have to contend with a Radiant Dragon, a Prismatic Dragon, if they're trying to create a permanent gateway portal to Celestia that bypasses the restrictions on only appearing on the within the ocean of holy water on the very first layer of the Seven Heavens. They might step in to prevent the characters from bringing an artifact that spits unlimited amounts of spheres of annihilation out into the prime material plane. It's just too disruptive and damaging. They might have an object in their hoard that is capable of banishing a demon lord from the prime material plane for no less than 100 years. It's just lying around in their stuff, and they may part with it for reasons. Epic dragons are for epic things, and what I'm trying to convey to you is that they're not random encounters that you roll for on a table. So they also don't exist in a vacuum. They're the apex of an entire region. Also, there are none anywhere on Faerun or Karatur. There may have been very long ago, but none have dwelled in these regions on the planet of Toril for at least 20,000 years. It's just too much of a backwater for them. This is the reason why it's called the Forgotten Realms, after all. Prismatic dragons can exist in the positive energy plane for a brief period of time, even though they're not native to it. They can only withstand it for a few minutes, but and then they're just simply overwhelmed by it and explode into supernovas. I should really talk about the positive material, the positive energy plane in another video, because it hasn't really been covered in 5th edition, nor much in 4th edition, and it's something which is quite fascinating. This is very impressive for a mortal being to even exist for a few minutes. Believe me, it would certainly boggle the mind of a solar angel if they got chased into the positive energy plane by a prismatic dragon playing a game of cosmic tag with them, and they didn't explode as soon as they got there. Anyway, I hope that was satisfactory for you who have been very patiently waiting for me to get to these two mighty creatures. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again soon with more Dungeons & Dragons lore, probably more dragons actually, and perhaps I will delve into some of the high-powered creatures found in the Epic Level Handbook again. If that idea appeals to you, grace the like symbol with your mouse pointer and gently apply pressure, if you would be so kind. Until next time, I'm wishing you all the very best.